The cult used everything MKUltra. They used drugs, used hypnosis, they used traumatic type things. Thank you for joining me on the Unrefined Podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Spain, along with Lindsy Waters, where each week we delve into the mysteries that shape our world, from the tangible to the supernatural, with the foundation rooted in biblical truth. For more content and exclusive resources, visit us at unrefinedpodcast.com. Now, let's dive into this week's episode. Hey, y'all. Brandon here, back with Lindsy for part 2 of our Sons of Sam series. Last episode, we laid the groundwork, the basics of the Berkowitz case, the official narrative, and how the NYPD wrapped it up with a neat little bow. One crazy guy, one .44 caliber revolver, case closed. But if you were paying attention, you already know it doesn't simply add up. We barely scratched the surface last time, so today we're picking up where we left off and going way deeper. This is where Maury Terry steps in. He wasn't just curious. He had lived in the same neighborhood Berkowitz did. And the more he dug, the more he uncovered something bigger, darker, organized. What if there was a cult with ranks, rituals, multiple shooters, and a web that stretched from coast to coast? That's what we're getting into today. So, what made Maury Terry think that Berkowitz wasn't the lone lunatic, but he's basically the patsy that they used to put in jail for this crime? I do want to say this. I do think his conversion to Christianity that he's had, that there's a guy that wrote a book about it. We're going to talk about that in another podcast. I do think it's legit. However, I do think that, Lindsay, you can tell me what you think about this. I do think, though, he's still scared and he's still lying about who's involved and stuff, just because of fear, not malicious or anything like that. What do you think, Lindsay?
Yeah, I mean, if he had all these people he talked about that ended up dead, weird connections later, for him to just say, no, all that was made up, I don't buy it.
Yeah.
And fear is often a motivator. Maybe he's still got family that's alive that he worries about. There's all kinds of reasons why he could do that.
Yeah, I don't necessarily think it's fear for himself as much as it is fear for someone else. But it could be any number of things that has him afraid and still scared. And honestly, I can't judge him. I don't know what I'd do in that type of situation. It's kind of a scary situation to know that your life is in the hands of potentially a cult that has its hands in literally everything in the Western world, if not in the world itself. So let's talk a little bit, Lindsay. I feel like, and you can correct me if you don't think so, but I feel like before we really dive into the whole cult aspect, we need to start with a woman named Arlis Perry. So she's super important, and she happened before all these murders happened. Am I right?
Yeah. She was from the Bismarck area of North Dakota.
Yeah. Near the Air Force Base there. What is it? Minot? Yeah.
It was 1974 is when she was murdered, October of 1974. And she married a guy who was going to Stanford. Bruce D. Perry was kind of her high school sweetheart. They were both believers. I know she was involved in like Young Life, I want to say, in different ministries. And there was the town she lived in, there was these rumors that there were kind of a satanic cult. Apparently, her and a friend went to visit them. They were wanting to talk to them about the gospel and things like that. And
witness to them. Yeah.
And when her and Bruce married, he was going to Stanford, so she moved to Stanford. And they were having some problems. They had argued the night they were walking around the campus, and she kind of separated from him and said, well, I think I want to go in this chapel here and pray for a little. I want to be alone and pray for a little.
Yeah, the chapel on the campus.
Stanford Memorial Church. And her body was found the next day. Her pants were off and posed in this weird thing where it was like a angle, like you had an angle one way and the angle the other way. Her legs formed one angle and the pants formed another angle, I believe. She had been raped, obviously, and violated in a way I won't even mention. And just she was found by the security guard named Stephen Crawford. We'll bring him up eventually, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, later on, David Berkowitz mentions her.
Very cryptically.
Yeah, Arlis Perry, hunted, stalked, and slain, followed to California, Stanford University. He wrote that in 1979.
Is it some book that he had or something?
Yeah.
I don't remember what book it was, but yeah, it was very cryptic, and so when Terry followed that out, that's when he found out.
There was
about a
no
lot of it.
prompting there. I mean, he hadn't been fed anything. He wrote that all on his own.
Yeah. So he obviously knew about it. Now, it's doubtful that he was there, but he obviously knew about it because this proves that there was a conspiracy of sorts, and it was a conspiracy that people communicated with each other. It wasn't like they were just like a little band of older teenagers, satanic panic type stuff. I want to clarify that. Now, this was before the whole satanic panic thing, but this was some of the stuff that led up to it. And in my opinion, my humble opinion, a lot of the satanic panic stuff was a smokescreen to actually confuse people about the real stuff that was going on out there. And I've had people, I'll say, well, the satanic panic was a wash. And they're like, what do you mean? You don't think rock stars did all? I said, yeah, I think rock stars did stuff. I think Motley Crue did stuff, but I think they did it to make money. I don't think they did it because they were really hardcore occultists.
Yeah.
But the the whole system, Hollywood, the entertainment industry, and governments and military, all that, it worked together to create a satanic panic to really. I mean, and we all know this. Well, I don't watch the news, but when we watch the news, when something is harped on so much, we get sick of it, we get tired of it, we begin to doubt it, we begin to question it, or we see a movie, we think, oh, well, there's no way that would be real life. Like I think about the whole Jason Bourne and MKUltra and all that kind of stuff. But Arlis Perry was super important to all this because it was the beginnings of the Sons of Sam showing that there's multiple murders, and it's going to connect two gentlemen that we're about to dive in here. Terry kind of believed like that they were cells, like terrorist type cells, like there was different cells. And the genius of that, and I hate to say the word genius, but it is, the genius of that is that the left hand never knows what the right hand's doing.
Yeah.
And even though there's communication, the communication is vague and it's need to know. It's compartmentalized like the government does with things. That's how you can have an organization like NASA that has really good people that are in it, that are space oriented people and et cetera, et cetera. However, at the same time, there's really bad people in it. And that's most of the bureaus or most of these, what you'd call government agencies, 3-letter agencies, that you have good and bad mixed in with it. But anyway, so the key players for now, until we get deeper, Terry's whole theory were who, Lindsay? Berkowitz was one.
Yeah, well, the Carr brothers.
The Carr brothers.
Yeah, definitely.
You want to go into them?
Well,
let's talk about them.
Yeah, I think we went into them a little bit last time.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
They were, they lived in Yonkers. Michael, the older brother of Michael, was a Scientologist.
Yes.
And
that's been proven.
Yeah, John, the younger brother, obviously, he was in the Air Force and worked at the base in Minot. We talked about how he had a really strange suicide, and Michael died, I think, less than a year later.
Car accident, right? When a car accident.
John, according to Phil Falcon, a Native American up in North Dakota, the Minot area, caught John doing a ritual in his house. So he connected him to occultic satanic activity.
Well, and Minot's really close to Bismarck, right? It's the same state. I mean, I don't know how close, but it's
close
not a coincidence.
Close is different out west, I guess, but yeah.
Yeah. It's like it is here in urban Mississippi, close. Oh, he only lives about 20 miles down the road. He's close, you know. I mean, so, but what are the odds? You know, So, and that's where John was killed, wasn't it? When it was in Minot,
Yeah. It was,
where
he
they
was in
found him.
Minot. He had drove back to kind of the New York Yonkers area, and then left his car and flew back to Minot, and then allegedly ended his life.
Yeah, he was the one they call Wheaties, right? John Wheaties. Yeah.
On Wheaties, yeah.
Which is an allusion to one of the letters. If you're listening to this, I suggest you get the different letters.
Yeah,
It's really interesting.
believe
Go
that
ahead.
was the letter that we talked about it last week. It was the one that didn't match
The handwriting.
the handwriting, and sounded a little bit too sophisticated. I believe, that was the one with the that was the one that had the reference to John Wheaties, John Wheaties.
Yeah. And that's what I was about to say is you guys, get online and look at the letters. You can find them online. Just Google them, and you can see
Breslin letter.
Breslin. He was a famous newspaper man, and he sent a letter to this newspaper man. It's totally different. I mean, they had handwriting, people and analyze it and stuff. It was written by a different person. I think several of the letters were written by different people, if I'm not mistaken. Right, Lindsay? And so that in itself, and we talked about this last time, all the different not mug shots. What are they called?
Composite drawing. That's what I call them.
Yeah, that's right. Composite drawings of short, tall, muscular, skinny, long hair, short hair, hat, no hat.
And as we mentioned last week, Tommy Zano, one of the witnesses for the Moskowitz killing, said that he saw a rather slender guy with kind of long hair, possibly wearing a wig. And the minute he saw Berkowitz, who's a stocky, he's not just like huge, but he's like a shorter, stockier built guy.
Yeah.
He knew that couldn't be the same guy.
Yeah, just by his build.
Yeah.
But there was, I think, one that kind of looks like Berkowitz. There was one.
Yeah.
So Berkowitz is not innocent in all this. I want you guys to understand that right now. We're not trying to say that an innocent man is in jail and was framed or anything like that. What we're trying to say is that Berkowitz was sucked into something that he didn't, I think, intend or know about, and he got sucked in. And I don't see him as a victim, but I don't see him as just a malicious perpetrator either. I think he just got sucked in a little too far. And let's see how far this rabbit hole goes. So we talked about Berkowitz and the Carr brothers. Michael died later. The older one died in a mysterious car wreck, and the whole thing looked like the group or whatever it is. We don't know yet. It looks like cleanup. It looks like they're trying to tie up loose ends. If I was watching a movie, this was what it would look like to me: tying up loose ends. And I just don't understand this phenomena. And this is not to insult policemen out there, but I don't get this investigative phenomena of getting like tunnel vision. I mean, I guess everybody gets it. They get their man, and that's who they want to. It happens a lot more than I think people are willing to admit. There's probably, I wouldn't say a lot of people in jail that are wrongly, but there's a fair amount, I bet, just because of tunnel vision and politics. And the other thing that people don't think about is just people in law enforcement and in the justice system that are involved in this group that we're about to dive into. The reason I brought up Arlen first is because, in my opinion, Lindsay, you can correct me if I'm wrong here. In my opinion, Arlen was the first one that it was obvious that it was a ritualistic murder just because of the
as far as connections with Son of Sam.
Yeah. I mean, just the arrangement of the body. Some of the stuff that we're not going to get into because I don't want to make this too explicit. I probably got to make it explicit anyway. But just with stuff with candles and the blasphemy in the church and where it was and just the condition of the crime scene and all that. And then they blamed it on the security guard.
Yeah.
And I was unsure about this, Lindsay. Maybe you can help me out. Was the security guard really involved, or was he just somebody they just patsied and wrote into it?
I mean, it's not implausible that he was involved, that he may have been a part of the network.
Yeah.
But every newspaper article I read about it and the Sons of Sam documentary, I haven't gotten any real details on the new, this was years later that they finally got some DNA hit that definitely tied him to it, and he, of course, killed himself when the cops were coming to arrest him. So that
Yeah.
was convenient.
Yeah.
That tied it all up with a nice little bow, and
Suicide? Who knows? I mean,
yeah.
Arkansas.
Well, yeah. I mean, he may have killed himself. He
Yeah,
may have
he may have.
thought, "Yeah, I'm involved in this, and these bad people are going to get me anyway if they're worried I'm going to talk. This group's still around, and I mean, yeah, we could speculate all day, but it just seemed really like another neat little lone nut scenario again that just doesn't make any sense. Doesn't explain some of the other stuff, like she was seen talking to a guy a lot on campus that didn't look like Stephen Crawford.
Yeah.
There was this weird thing where there was another Bruce Perry there that had supposedly talked to her, but wasn't her husband, or
Yeah.
was, and yeah, there was just all sorts. I mean, there was the connection with the cult in
Well,
her
there's a phone
town.
line. Wasn't there a phone line with another guy? It was in the phone book
Yeah,
named Bruce Perry. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. I don't buy that Crawford. And look, as far as his DNA, he was a security guard who went through that building all the time. I mean,
Right.
they haven't said whether that was on her body or what. They just say it was more definite. And
Yeah.
people a lot of times, well, if the police have something they say is definite, yeah, and maybe 9 times out of 10 that's true. But this time, it was light on the details when I looked into it. Just and then
Yeah.
this very convenient suicide. So, and honestly, yeah, look, it. Sometimes I think cops, you're not going to bring these people back, and the family's still grieving, and maybe these police officers, maybe this, other than just tunnel vision, there's just this, we want closure for this, we want closure for this
Yeah.
family, and we want
Yeah.
this stain on our police station here for not being able to figure this out gone. So that might motivate them sometimes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not always malicious. Yeah,
Yeah.
we do need to bring. It's not fair to say that it's always a railroad, but that's just reasons for them to wanting to solve it fast. And we do know with the Berkowitz aspects, there was a mayor there that was pretty unpopular that was trying to, and these murders made him more unpopular, and them catching Berkowitz got him reelected. So I mean, there's always that dynamic. That's the nature of all this. That's how you just have to sort through information, sort through and dig into the stuff to really figure out what's really happening. And I was talking about this on Facebook. A lot of times, people who do investigations or even podcasts, they go for the low hanging fruit just for the
Mm.
novelty or the sensationalism of it or whatever. And I'm sure we've been guilty of that because that's just reality. I read something last night that says that we all make mistakes. We just learn to make less of them. And so that's just reality. We're all wrong. We're just less wrong as we grow older and we grow wiser. So, but yeah, just the easiest way. I know Occam's razor says the easiest is the most. But when you get into conspiratorial stuff and you get into a web of different types of stuff, which does exist, Occam's razor doesn't always come to bear on it at all times.
Mm.
So, all right. Well, the interesting thing about this whole cult ritual thing that came from Arlen, we can move forward into the Berkowitz murders and stuff, and I think we need to talk about Untermeyer Park, the Devil's Cave, and Maury Terry was really, pretty big on this because I mean it was loaded with occultic stuff, and it wasn't kids like me that listened to Iron Maiden when I was a kid and put
Yeah.
Eddie all over stuff or put upside down pentagrams because I listened to Motley Crue. You could tell in the little gutters, so to speak, that there was something else going on, something more. It was an adult or a young adult thing, not a teenager type thing. I'm sure there was teenagers there that probably were creeped out
Yeah.
by it. Like
Yeah.
we used to do stuff like that, go look at creepy stuff but we weren't a part of it. So
Yeah. Yeah. The
he,
whole they're just being edgy thing doesn't. Yeah. That's
yeah, yeah,
that's
yeah,
a
yeah, yeah.
not an explanation for everything.
Well, and like BT has told us, and I agree with him. He's told us times past. He said that there are dabblers, and most
Mhm.
of the people are dabblers. However, there are serious people that are seriously into it, and they generally aren't very vocal or, like you said, they're not like showing off about it. They're they're doctors and lawyers
Yeah.
and military people and government agents and politicians. So it can get as serious as you want it. And Berkowitz said that this place, Underminer Park, was their initiation site for their group that they had there. And then they checked that out and investigated it. And then it led to the whole. They moved to Minot and the connection there with John Carr and that I think if I recall, it was either in Terry's book or I think it was in Terry's book. This was not in the documentary. In Terry's book, there was an illusion that there was satanic cults in Minot already in its like background before all this started making connections with the Sons of Sam, and I find that kind of an interesting type thing. There seems to be a lot of this type of stuff, and I'm just making an observation around military bases.
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, I recall the one that was the one that left the Satanic Church, Michael Aquino. Is that
Mm,
Isaac Aquino? I think
yeah.
he was out in San Francisco or San Diego or somewhere out there. And that was one with the tunnels where they were tunneling the little kids from the base, from kindergarten to the base or whatever that they
Yeah.
found. And he says he's still innocent and stuff. So I guess he's innocent until proven guilty. But there was a lot of evidence about that. And it's just interesting that there's a lot of these creepy little occultic type groups that grow up around military bases.
Yeah.
So we can get into that later.
Well, there's lots of little, like tunnels, dog or animal sacrifice. That was a big part of the Untermeyer Park thing, was that dogs, and I
Yeah.
think specifically German Shepherds or Alsatian type dogs were
Yeah.
favored. There's a kind of a Manson, not a direct connection there, but in Ed Sanders' book, one of the groups he talks about as a possible process offshoot was the Kirke Order of Dog Blood.
Yeah.
This group, led by a female who went by Kirke or Circe.
Yeah.
Sounds a lot like
Like
Marianne de Grimston.
Hedicut. Yep.
Yeah, sometimes she went by Circe as well.
Yeah.
And they were big on sacrificing dog, just any sort of animal, and particularly animals that were solid black for some reason. And of course,
Well,
blood
but I
drinking.
do find it interesting that a lot of German shepherds were, and particularly the one, and we need to talk about this, that there was an ear chopped off in Yonkers in near Untermeyer Park, and they later found the ear or what they thought was possibly the ear in Minot. It was frozen. It was preserved. Yeah, they cut off this ear, and then they found it later. It was, what is it? Taxidermied. It was taxidermied. The ear was taxidermied, and so that was a huge red flag kind of type thing. And I'm bringing up the German Shepherds because the German Shepherd thing goes back to the whole Nazi thing that we talked about with Operation Paperclip and how, I always see Nazism as not really a German thing as much as it'll, like Eddie Brock and Venom, it'll kind of adapt to any culture that it's infiltrated, which it infiltrated some. I was reading the Lavinda book, and he talked about in Pinochet down in what was that, Peru, and I think it was Peru,
Yeah.
and
Or
and
Chile.
Chile, yeah,
Yeah.
Chile, and it very much was Nazi in Chile, and it just that parasitic aspect of Nazism, and its connections to
Yeah,
OTO and him.
Pinochet actually used a weird German cult down there with some Nazi connections, I believe, to help. He used their facilities to torture people and all sorts of things. So yeah.
Well, and you see it even in our modern day political drama that we have is that label thrown around, and it always goes back to Germany and things. But the reality is that that's been around for a lot longer than Germany. That was just it was reincarnated, so to speak.
Yeah.
In that, I mean, actually, the swastika is an ancient Indian symbol.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's all over the place. The Indians
Yeah.
were the most famous before the Nazis, but it's all over
Yeah.
the place. You see it in
Yeah.
some Native American cultures and everywhere.
Yeah, which is really interesting. It's in these different groups that probably had no communication with each other. You see this interesting symbol, and even the group we're about to dive into, that kind of brought all this together. Terry tracked different similar murders and MOs to different places. Like, we already talked about Midnight. We've talked about Los Angeles. There's some connections there with Manson, the family. And then San Francisco, which we'll get into later in this episode. But this was the one that really blew me away. And I don't want to reveal it yet. But and then Houston, which is an interesting place, and then New Orleans too. That was left out. New Orleans was, and all this seemed to connect to this one group called the Process Church, which we're going to do an episode. We have somebody who's and she is the bomb. She's pretty much, I'd say she's an expert learning about. She wouldn't, but I would say she knows so much about the Process Church. She's going to be on our show and take us deeper into the Process Church and all their tentacles to different places. But the Process Church connection. Do we really want to go into all the details of that, other than the fact that they were just involved? We'll save that for our guest, I think. But tell us, more about their theology. Can you tell me a little bit? What do they believe, Lindsay?
They're a Scientology offshoot.
That's important, yeah.
So, like, a lot of the weird psychology of Scientology was kind of adopted by them. They used e-meters at first.
It was called something else before Process, too. It was, I want to say transactional analysis, but that's another form of psychology. It was something else.
We said it last episode. So,
yeah, that's right.
But I mean, they had this strange teaching of almost, I don't want to call it a trinity, because sometimes it sounded like that, but most often it sounded more like just three separate gods. Some kind of weird, like, you got Jehovah, and then you got Lucifer, and then you got Satan, who's not the same as Lucifer, and these three separate gods. Jehovah's this very orderly, kind of rule-based god. Lucifer's more this enlightened sort of
Zacchaeus type, hedonistic type god, or
I think that was important. But you get some of that in their view of Satan, the Satan faction in the group too. Satan was just more the nihilistic, from my understanding, version of just of Lucifer, and so there were three factions within the Process at one time.
And they all three were valid, correct? I mean, even the Jehovah one was valid. It was valid to them. And Jesus and all this kind of stuff. And
Jesus, and a lot of times Robert de Grimston is presented as this Christ-like figure to them.
Yeah.
He's sort of the embodiment of the gods or whatever. But the important thing, because it connects to Manson, who had a similar idea, was this notion that Satan and Christ had been reconciled in this group. And that was an important part of their theology.
I mean, who doesn't want reconciliation, huh?
Yeah. So that was an important part of their theology, was that Satan and Christ kind of were reconciled, so that,
and they were against Lucifer, which was going to bring in the end times apocalyptic end time race war, which was
race war. Well, they had the same idea that there would be this end times war, and that they were accelerating that. That was a part of their theology too. Like Manson, they wanted to do something to accelerate. And when you get into Manson, there's a lot of this argument about they just wanted to try to get Beausoleil out of jail, so they did similar murders to that guy. And I would say, I think Manson bought some of it, and that may be, part of the motivation too.
He wasn't a complete shyster. I go back to the episode we did with Laurel Canyon. We talked about him and his enlightenment that he had in jail, where we would suspect is some kind of a demonic presence filled him. The infinite. That demonic presence filled him and incredibly increased his IQ and everything. I mean, was he? I can't remember. Was he involved in Scientology before that, or was that around the same time?
It gets blurry when exactly. It sounds like he went through the Scientology stuff when he was at his second prison term,
California.
I want to say McNeil Island, I think it is, and he claimed to have gotten to Theta Clear status.
Clear,
So he was. It's hard to know exactly, just from what I've read. It's hard to figure out exactly that thing about the infinite comes from Susan Atkins' autobiography. Something she claims he told her.
Everybody. Well, I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, he's not going to say, I got possessed by a demon in prison.
Yeah.
You know,
He presented it as the divine coming to him in some way. But yeah. So yeah, that's all that's to say is that, the process had a certain theology that borrowed from Christianity and possibly from Crowley and Satanism and other things, and kind of mixed it all together. And an important part of it was this notion of Christ and Satan being reconciled. And yeah, they love German shepherds, their theology, but yeah, they kept them around, and according to Timothy Wiley, treated them better than the people there. So, yeah,
that's an interesting book you want to check out. It's Love, Sex, Fear, and Death by Timothy Wiley. It is not. I wouldn't say it's pro-process church, but I wouldn't also say that it's anti-process church. He kind of dispels some of the stuff we might be talking about, and our future guest will probably dive into a lot of that. But it's still a great source to find out about the inner workings of the process church. Yeah. That we'll put that in the show notes to look through. It's an interesting book to wade through, but I mean, you have to really want it and we're kind of nerds, so we really want it. But yeah, I'm not completely finished with it, but I've trekked through a lot of it. And the interesting thing to me about this is I almost wonder if this is bigger than the process, that's just a sub cult of the whole Luciferian thing that's going on there. And it's like the whole Kevin Bacon game that we used to play in the 80s. I mean, let's see how many connections you have to Crawley. And it's like 3 degrees from the process church to, I mean, you have L. Ron Hubbard to Jack Parsons to Crawley to L. Ron Hubbard and Jack Parsons to Scientology to the process church. There's 3 degrees of separation there.
Well, and there's a lot of questions that go along with this. Do the different groups know about each other? Is it just kind of a, will they kind of allow some offshoot to splinter off, but maybe infiltrate it and keep it going because it serves their purposes? There's all sorts of speculation that we could do.
Controlled opposition type stuff. I mean, that exists. I've read a lot of EMP type books, and it's always different people who invade when they do the EMP. Sometimes it's Iran, sometimes it's China. But I read the latest one I read was I think Afghanistan or somewhere Taliban from the Middle East, and the groups were all cells, and they were brought in through Mexico and Canada, and they're sleeper cells everywhere.
Yeah,
and they knew about each other. They knew they existed, and they knew they needed to coordinate. But that's about it. They didn't know who they were. What's that deniability? They wanted to have
plausible deniability.
Yeah. And anyway, so where do you think the military gets all this from? It's like a give and a take. They borrow stuff from a cult, and a cult borrows stuff from them, because the family, Manson, very much, and the process is very much run like a military with all their neat hierarchy and their different orders, and which harkens back to the grandfather of them all, Masonry. So yeah, I think Masonry is probably involved in that somehow. But the interesting thing is that the process church over time, I forget what year, maybe you'll know what year. Is it 79 that they disbanded? I'm using air quotes.
I forget exactly when.
It's late 70s, right? It's right after the Sons of Sam killings.
It may have been earlier than that they
disband.
Kind of closer to the middle of the 70s, I think, maybe.
It might have been 74, 75, something like that, around the time when.
But yeah, they immediately after that they had a foundation church. They just rebranded.
Yes,
so people throw this little neat they disbanded out there without telling you how many rebrands they've got, which brings us up to I don't know how much you want to get into this, the Best Friends Animal Society, which doesn't sound like it should have anything to do with the process, but
it does.
A lot of the founding members started it, and that's their current rebranding. Oh, we're just a humane society now.
Well, and the 4P movement too. That was also an aspect of it too. Was an offshoot, and see, I think that splintering
that was while they were still active with 4P. And Kirke Order of Dog Blood.
Yeah, I mean, there are all these little offshoot groups, and I think, like you said, I think they let these offshoots happen because it deflects. It deflects. There's not one monolithic group that you can go after. There's always that, like I said, that plausible deniability.
Yeah.
There's that aspect of, which one's the real one,
Yeah. Well,
and
and I wonder if that Cure K Order of Dog Blood wasn't just a Marianne side project where she could do some of the stuff she couldn't do with the process,
process.
basically.
Yeah,
Could
yeah.
be, you know?
Yeah, to me, reading Wiley, the process they never intended to be like a normal mainstream Christian or religious type
Mm,
organization.
yeah.
However, they never intended to go as far in through the occult and like, what Thelema and Hermetic and just all that Crawley stuff, OTO. I mean, there's signs that they were connected to the OTO that
Yeah.
Manson was connected to out
Solar
in
Lodge.
yeah, out in Laurel Canyon, out in that area out there. Couldn't do an episode without mentioning Laurel Canyon, but yeah, it's really interesting, that place.
One more day up in the canyon, to quote a
Yeah,
popular song.
exactly.
One I really loved.
So talk about Best Friends Animal Society,
I mean, yeah, they're located in an interesting state, town called Kanab in Utah.
Utah. Yeah,
And yeah, they're started by process members.
and it's business as usual. And I found an interesting tie-in too, and I'm sure other people have too. Back to the Berkowitz case when they tried to get him to work for a animal rescue
Yeah,
to steal German shepherds for their sacrifices and stuff. This animal thing, it's like letting the fox in the hen house,
oh
so
yeah,
so to speak. And here's another thing too. We don't know how much there was human sacrifice in all this too. I mean,
yeah.
we would be definitely, in my opinion, I would be ignorant to say that there was not. Other than just the cleaning up the loose ends, I mean, those would
Yeah.
be counted as sacrifices and stuff. But
Human sacrifice can look like different things. It doesn't have to be
exactly,
some
that's
like
important. Yeah,
goofy ritual all the time. I mean,
yeah, yeah.
William Ramsey, has speculated about the smiley face killer, that those could be human sacrifices. It does not always have to look like some
Well,
ritual
and
tied
there's a
down victim and
yeah,
pentagrams
yeah.
and candles and altars and whatnot.
Well, there's been speculation on two hotbed. One's a hotbed political issue, but there's a disaster related to a certain date that has been assumed to have been a mass sacrifice
Yeah.
in New York City. And then there's the modern day method of birth control that people
Mm,
use. I'm speaking in cryptic code, you guys. I don't want to be bopped off, but that could be said to Molech to be a ritual sacrifice as well. So yeah, I mean, Lindsay's right. What is human sacrifice in this context? It could be anything. It doesn't have to be the traditional um, half naked woman about to stab a man on a slab. I mean, that's what we think about. But
yeah.
yeah, so I'm assuming that happened. And even these one offs, like with Wheaties, John Carr, and Michael Carr, they could be considered. Anytime there's blood spilled, it could be considered a sacrifice. Even wars. Even wars. I've heard of occultic people that they pick wars, they start wars, and the massive amount of blood. I was studying the word this week, in Nephesh in Hebrew basically has a connotation of soul life. It's suke
Mm,
is the Greek alternate, and so when it says life is in the blood, it's basically saying soul life is in the blood.
mm,
And so that brings up a whole different dimension of when we talk about sacrificing, including Christ's sacrifice, but even this occultic type stuff. What do you think about this? Let's go here, Lindsay. I think this is pretty important. The whole CIA law enforcement aspect of it. I'm always quick to say that there's a three-letter agency that if there's something going on occultic, they have their hands in it somehow. Now, I don't know if they have it in because they're true believers or as much as they want to manipulate. They have some kind of higher goal, so to speak. So, what do you think about CIA and law enforcement in this cult and these pockets of groups and stuff?
I mean, it'd be hard not. We know some of the things in the CIA has been involved in.
Yeah, that have come out. Yeah.
Yeah, so it'd be foolish not to at least consider it. But yeah, and yeah, I mean, it's funny. I was reading a little bit about Jim Jones
Mm.
and his buddy. I forget the guy's name. A guy he grew up with who was in the CIA.
They all have intelligence ties, don't
You
they?
can clear on the recordings around the time of the so-called mass suicide. Not really much suicide, mostly outright murder. But
Sacrifice.
yeah, you can clearly say, "Get so and so out of here," before somebody kills him. His CIA friend there. I mean, it's clear as a bell.
Uh-huh.
So now, what would the CIA get out of this?
That's
Well,
what's.
I mean, if there's mind control and techniques involved, if some cult leaders really figured that out, of course they want to learn from him. I mean, that's
Yeah,
just the
and
simplest
they did.
explanation.
Yeah,
But,
Project Montauk and
you
all that
know,
kind of stuff.
I mean, keeping people afraid, that's even doing really weird stuff. Here's one. Since the whole satanic panic thing, that creates the perfect cover. Like anytime something weird and satanic is there, you satanic panic conspiracy theorists, nut jobs.
Yep,
It's a convenient sort of it
scapegoat.
yeah, poisoning the well sort of thing for them.
Yeah,
So yeah, there's all sorts of reasons why they would want to be involved in it.
yeah. I mean, Satanic Panic is almost as bad as conspiracy theory as far as
Yeah.
it's loaded, its connotations and
Shuts down the
loaded.
conversation for a lot of
Shuts it
people.
down. Yeah, yeah, definitely. And it's like anything like this, though. There's some elements of truth, but Satan never tells an outright lie. He tells the truth, and that lie is very subtle in there,
Hmm.
but it's enough to twist the truth. So the cults used everything that MKUltra. They used drugs. They used hypnosis. They used traumatic type things. And so why wouldn't there be some kind of a connection intelligence wise? And we already know pretty sure that the whole Laurel Canyon or the whole counterculture that we talked about earlier was a big CIA experiment just to see how they could influence culture.
Yeah.
Which
Oh
I
yeah.
think it was even more than that, but on a surface level, that is a
Yeah.
pretty well known type thing. I've heard I think McGowan talked about it in his book, but
Oh
Jay
yeah.
Dyer's talked about that. Several people that have
Yeah.
talked about that.
Chaos. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yes, it is in chaos too, isn't it? Yeah. Um. So these cult groups could have been petri dishes. You
Mm.
know,
Yeah,
they
that's a good term.
and you just to see what happens. And people, we have this insatiable, obviously, since the Garden of Eden, we have this insatiable desire for knowledge, and that's what pushes and steers the occult and all this forward is that gnosis, that knowledge is power, but not knowledge is salvation. And it's even infiltrating modern day Christianity. This you have to know. It's about knowing more than it is about
Yeah.
experiencing or having a relationship. And so why wouldn't it be why wouldn't the occult and the occultic want to know more about how the brain works and how these things work? The
Yeah.
problem I run into, Lindsay, is I don't know which came first, the chicken or the egg. And I don't mean that literally. I mean,
Yeah.
did the CIA initiate this, or did the occult and the cults already exist, and then they studied it and figured out how to capitalize it on for themselves? I mean, there's a story, and I don't know how true it is, by a guy that basically said that that a lot of governmental type stuff they learned dealing with this, and you can see some of it in Stranger Things. They love to hide in plain sight what they do. A lot of the sensory deprivation stuff, they do that in casinos, and they got that from the mob. The mafia are the
Hmm.
ones that came up with no windows. You never know what time of day it is. That way, time doesn't really process. You use blue screens on the different things and all these different psychological techniques. Dark psychology is what they're called.
Mm.
The government just borrowed them carte blanche from organized crime.
Yeah. That's an interesting question that comes up a lot in anything we research. How much of this is intelligence community? How much of this is cults, the occult? How
Yeah.
much of this comes from, to use Lavinda's term, the sinister forces and things like that? How much? Yeah, how much of this comes from the spiritual darkness?
Yeah.
in high places. And,
Yeah.
you know, at the end
Yes.
of the day, it doesn't matter. They all work in concert.
It's like a spectrum.
Yeah. And they all feed into each other and they can all be there and it doesn't conflict. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a preacher that I love, and I'm not gonna name him, but shout out, he knows who I'm talking about, and he's been teaching about quantum physics, and he was talking about just waves and frequencies and stuff, and how we only see so much of a certain wavelength of frequency of color, but yet there's frequency that we don't see, and there's frequency that I don't hear, and there's frequency that on the other side too. And I think that would be a great analogy of what we're talking about, just from the nature of quantum physics is we see the colors. How much better to create a religion that basically says the only real thing is what you see, which I would call scientism. The only real thing that's legit is what you see, which we know is crap. It's not true. I mean, you can't see microwaves or radio waves or any of that kind of stuff, and all that frequency is definitely legit. And so I think, going back to what we were just talking about, I think the answer is yes. I think that they obviously the sinister forces, the principalities, powers, dominions, thrones, that whole list that Paul talks about is still incredibly active in our world today. And obviously they're at work with unbelievers and possibly even believers. I could get probably in trouble for saying that, but I'm just going to throw it out there. And they're the ultimate cause because they have an agenda and they're going for it. And Luciferianism, I would think that would be the ultimate, even above the government agencies or even masonry or all that stuff. Is it all projects itself up to a
Yeah.
Luciferian, and now I'm so confused about who Satan is. I don't know. It's like, the more I learned about the giants and the Nephilim and the Elohim and
Yeah.
all this kind of stuff, I don't know who Satan is anymore. We'll call him the Satan, the main guy.
Yeah.
Whether it's not Lucifer, I know that. But anyway, if there is just one main guy, there might be a council.
Even that
I've
word
thought about that.
Lucifer is kind of
Oh yeah.
problematic to the whole thing because we don't
Well,
know.
Well, and it was in the
Yeah.
Vulgate, and it means light bringer. People have used that. Cults have used that to say that's the other side of Jesus. He's the
Hmm.
morning star, and
Yeah.
which he is.
It sounds like process theology.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, but yeah, I just wanted to go down that road because I think it's important in this whole Sons of Sam that we need to bring in the whole aspect of CIA and law enforcement, because that could have been potentially some of the reasons why. I just remember in one of that documentary we watched with the Netflix, there was one policeman in there. He had it bad for Maury Terry. He wanted him to go down, and there was a lot of juice behind it. It was really sus.
Yeah.
Is how I would say it, and it could just be because he saw Maury Terry as kind of counteracting their investigations and saying they didn't do a good a
Yeah.
job, or it could be more. But there was too many leaks and different things too, as well,
Hmm.
for there not to be some kind of law enforcement, local law enforcement involvement in these occults or occult type stuff. So let's talk a little bit about, you brought up some of this earlier. The more we dove into this, the more we realized that there was a possibility that this spread to other serial killers.
Mm. Yeah.
And the biggest one to me was the Zodiac.
Mm.
And all the similarities, I'm actually looking through him now. I'm actually moved on and reading and studying just his symbol and how it relates to the process church, which how it relates to the Star of David, which it interestingly enough, how it relates to Baphomet, which it relates. It's interesting the symbology of all this type of stuff and the
Yeah. I mean,
swastika.
and it just looks like a crosshairs.
Yeah, yeah, and but then you throw in the cryptic letters,
Hmm.
just like the Sons of Sam.
Yeah.
Uh, they were written in code. Berkowitz admitted at some point in time, I'm not saying he's the Zodiac killer, but Berkowitz admitted at one point in time that he loved the whole code dimension, that they put that in there on purpose to, it was thrilling
Yeah.
to see if they could figure out the codes. Then you have another one that's interesting, and I haven't really dove into this one though. You have the whole Richard Ramirez, the Night
Hmm.
Stalker, and then Maury Terry, I think in his book alludes to the Hillside Stranglers. that could have been involved as well. I remember that case was blown wide open because they thought it was one, and then all of a sudden they realized it was two.
No, yeah.
And Terry kind of alluded to the fact, well, maybe there's more than two. I tell you what it does to me, Lindsay. It makes me begin to believe that this psychology of serial killers that we have is not complete.
Yeah.
That they're using people that are wired like that, but they're just these lone, crazy
Mhm.
psychopaths or sociopaths, that they're part of an army. Does that sound really weird? But that's kind of the image that I have, that there's
I mean,
a serial killer army out there that's been MKUltra or programmed or whatever. This is all speculation, you guys. This is not me saying I have empirical evidence for this. I just want to throw that out there.
Henry Lee Lucas and Otis Toole
Yep. Yep.
seem to say that, and then, of course, they've been discredited because, yeah, I
Of
mean,
course.
he took credit for a lot of murders he couldn't have committed. We all know that, and that for some reason just means he all or nothing kind of
Yeah.
mentality. Either he killed all the people he said he did, or he killed none, kind of thing. And
Which
yeah,
is actually an
the
occult principle. All
the
or nothing.
very convenient. I mean, yeah, working to get him freed when he very rarely. We're just talking about Texas here.
Yeah.
Even outside of when W was governor there, that rarely happened.
Yeah.
And well, they made it well. There was no real evidence tying him to any of this stuff. But yeah, my point is there. Like he said there was a network with occultic connections and military connections doing all this, that he had received training. And I'll admit it's hard to unravel his lies from the truth, but he did point people to this like ranch or something that where they found stuff. And yeah, I mean,
The ranch. Interesting enough.
I personally find it hard to believe that there's just that it's easy for one guy to kill dozens. Certainly, when you get into the dozens of people and get away with it as long as some of them do, without some help and guidance, or at least a network that can
Yeah. Well, I've
help
heard
them clean things up and things like
yeah.
that. It's just
Well,
hard for me to believe.
I agree. It's almost incredible to believe. And I've heard psychologists float this like Sith sort of theory that there could be two. There's
Mm,
a mentor and a mentoree, apprentice
yeah,
and master, and all that. But yeah, I don't know. And I find it really interesting though that our culture always pushes the serial killer as the lone crazy person.
yeah,
um, I don't think I've ever seen, like in Criminal Minds or some of those shows or anything, like there might have been, I don't know for sure, but there might have been a group per se that's
yeah,
connected to a bigger group. And I mean, there's just obvious that there's an agenda going on here. And,
yeah.
it's remarkable to me that disease that just we had an epidemic with just brought to light so many revelations of so many different things. I mean, we're at such a different place right now
Yeah,
in 2025 than we were in 2019,
yeah.
and all this still existed. But it's just the level of it and the awakening part of it is really fascinating, which almost makes me wonder, why is that happening? What's going on there? So, and then we have the Manson family. That's the classic connection.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
they were directly connected to Scientology and the process.
Mhm.
Then, like we've talked about uh, earlier, the Laurel Canyon connection. We know that was a psyop in a lot of ways to create a crazy culture, and it did
Mhm.
it. And you heard in some of our earlier podcasts, a lot of these big rock stars were handlers and were pedophiles and were MK Ultra. They were doing traumatic things at an Air Force base there in the canyon. And
Mhm.
anyway, we don't need to think that ended in 1979. Like somehow the 80s ushered into this utopia, or that it doesn't happen now. It's
Yeah.
a lot harder, I think, but then in some ways it could be a lot easier because technology can be used to clean up
Oh,
better as
yeah.
well.
It's a
So,
double-edged sword, kind of.
well, and yeah, and then you run into this whole aspect of distraction, smokescreen kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We just had an incident with some they're properly labeled space travelers, I think was what
Mm-hmm.
NASA called them. That's all we've heard about. What's going on?
Yeah.
I'm always sus now when the media focuses on one trite, stupid event and they hone in on it, and you're like, right, that's what the left hand or the right hand's doing. What's the left hand doing?
Yeah.
And I use that on purpose. And you always wonder what's really happening. And I do think that there is a certified governmental conspiracy to erode public trust in the government. Definitely.
Mm.
I mean, I tell my youngest son all the time that I love our country, but I don't trust our government.
Mm.
And I agree with some of the things that they came about with originally. I don't believe in the myth of the Christian nation
Mm.
uh, stuff, but yeah, and there's just too much connection of these different serial killers, and maybe the Zodiac killer will be one we'll dive into later or whatever, or we can
Yeah.
even talk about the Zodiac with uh our guest that we have on the show. Now, let's just wrap this up. Do you think, Lindsay, your honest opinion that the process is still in action, that they're still doing stuff, that this we knew that the Friends, what was it, Best Friends Animal
Society.
Society,
Yeah.
we know it still exists.
Mm.
Uh, we know that our friend that's going to be on the show gets constant flack and stuff from weird places and weird stuff. I just wonder how active the process is, or if the process is just transformed into another
Mm.
type thing that's even outside the Best Friends and Animal Society. So, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't see why they would stop doing what they had been doing. We know they were trying to hide things back then.
Yeah,
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 there's still sort of groups and people who are really into the process. Maybe that guest you talked about will talk about this more, but I mean, yeah,
yeah.
um, musicians, artists, art collectives. Um,
Wellness. I
yeah.
found out that there's a huge push for this wellness kind of stuff. Interesting enough, a lot of them support Robert Kennedy. I found out a lot of
Mm.
these wellness orgs, and they're diving into Silicon Valley, and it makes me wonder about Elon. I mean, Elon is sus in a lot of things,
Yeah.
particularly his Halloween costume he did last year, and I wonder if he's just doing that to be a troll. But at the same time, that's a good way to hide in plain sight. Just be a troll and
Yeah.
act like you're trolling when you're really being serious. And I hope to get into this later on down the road in our podcast and different episodes about this whole technology occultism,
Mm.
technomancy is the
Yeah.
word for it. And what's going on there, and take a dive into that kind of stuff. Yeah. Anything else? What about Maury Terry? Do you think he was taken out, or do you think he just died?
Mm.
I mean,
I,
they
I
discredit him.
I don't yeah, like I don't think they had to take him out.
Yeah,
That's my opinion on it. They may have, but I don't think they had to. I think they discredited him to such a degree, and maybe drove him a little crazy.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
you
He
know,
had the tunnel vision too.
I think
You,
that Netflix documentary was a part of it. I think there was other motivations going on there,
I do too.
and it could have just been used to do that. But yeah, I don't think they had to. I think they killed his spirit, so to speak,
Yeah,
over the years and turned him into a shell husk of who he
the,
formerly was and
yeah.
discredited him. Yeah, I mean, they didn't have to. The
Well,
damage was already done when he died, I think.
and you look at the Netflix video, it showed some of the shows that he won, and they would put him on I forget the names of the shows back in the '80s and stuff. That I mean, I used to watch them; they were cool. But they put him on a show with like two nut jobs. I mean, like
Hmm.
literally,
Yeah,
and then process of guilt by association. Even though he was trying to be rational and
yeah,
wasn't, looking at people's auras or something crazy like
yeah.
that. It was, and it immediately discredited him, disqualified him. And then, and we've talked about this, the fact that this guy that did the Netflix for him, lead to promote Maury Terry's agenda. It was about Maury Terry's life. It was more about that than it was the Sons of Sam, even though it was about the Sons of Sam. If Maury Terry was alive, in my opinion, he wouldn't want that guy anywhere near his book writing a
No.
special forward or preface. I think because of our society, I think a lot of people are going to watch the documentary and that's going to be it. And they're going to believe that, when in reality, and you told me this before I did it, but when I read the book, there were so many differences in the book than there is in the documentary. It was
Yeah.
blatant. It was just boom. There's a basic skeleton, but he went so much deeper into so much stuff, and it was almost like intentionally
Yeah.
left out,
Yeah.
and when you told me that, I was like, nah, surely can't, but yeah, when I labored through that thing, I'm like, man, that is a totally different perspective of this whole Sons of Sam aspect than this Netflix documentary
Yeah.
that was out there. So
Yeah. I mean, yeah. He befriended him at one point too. It's important to bring that up.
yeah.
Ate tuna sandwiches with him. He says that in the
Hmm.
forward.
Hmm.
One way or another, it ends up contributing to the you use the word taking out of his credibility and his character.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, yeah,
Well, I want to say this. We are on a journey. This podcast is on a journey with our different episodes to kind of give a teaser of where we're going. We are trying to unravel, to figure out the involvement of cults, the occult, different stuff like that. I mean, we're still going to have other episodes of what I call fun stuff, and some sponsor only episodes and everything, like more lighter stuff. But
hmm
we're on a path to unravel, maybe, hopefully. And I don't want to be grandiose and say we've got all the answers, because we don't. I mean, we have zilch,
mm
but we're on the path to know more,
mm
even though we know very little. We want
yeah,
to know more of the very little, I guess, is a better way to put it.
yeah,
And so we have many episodes coming, you guys, that are going to really dive deeper into this and all these connections and all this kind of
yeah.
stuff. So Sons of Sam's not the last time you hear about that. This is just
Nope.
our little teaser intro to it. And you're going to hear about a lot of other things as well.
And this has been an interesting journey on this one in particular. And as with all of them, there was overlap with stuff we've talked about in the past. So I'm looking forward to seeing
Can't
where that
happen.
goes
Yeah.
moving forward here.
Yeah.
So yeah,
It's
just
just,
stay with us here. It'll be interesting. We promise.
yeah, definitely. What is that Grateful Dead song? What a long, strange trip it's been. And so they were talking about something else, but we're just talking about the just what's out there. And with us, you guys, we want to tell you up front, some of what we're doing, maybe even a large portion of what we're doing is speculation. We're trying to piece things together. We have evidence, but like I said, we don't have empirical proof. But we're just going to throw things out there and let people think and decide for themselves what you think. What could it be? How could it go? So please don't take us as saying, oh, this is how it was. This is us along with you
Yeah,
taking a journey into something that's behind the scenes, that's a lot more sinister and is probably a lot bigger than we even
yeah.
imagine. So, well, thank you guys out there. And Lindsay, thank you as always for being
Likewise.
the best host, the hostess with the mostest. And I just love the conversation. We just had a good conversation about this. And you guys, we will see you soon. So remember, though, this all comes back to Jesus. Jesus is the truth. He's the way, he's the life. And he is the answer to all this, to all these questions.
Mhm.
He's the answer. And pursue truth, pursue the person. Thanks for listening and supporting us. And remember, stay naturally supernatural.